Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi,
I'm
Katherine.
Hello.
I'm happy to see you.
Hello.
Did Erin told me she added the Enneagram map so that you all could look at it on the website. It's katherinefauvre.com/Enneagram maps. As I referred to the centers, you'll probably want to see that. So this is what you probably want to have while we're talking about it, because I will be referencing these centers in a few different ways. This is an introduction, but for example, I have 96 of these, and Ichazo had 108. So there are many, many ways we can look at the types and map them according to so many different approaches. It could be the Enneagram of process, which is one that I teach. There's one with all the dichotomies, one with of course, the types on their statements, on their avoidances, on their core fears. It's just wonderful to look at everything in terms of what the centers themselves reveal. Now, what I think I'd like to do is just see you guys, and I'll have one of mine. And if you have any of my books, it's the one I always put in, because it's just a very useful, like this is in the any style book. You can, I'm too small now, right? But it's in there. I always include it, because if we don't really understand the centers, we miss some really key information about the types, or ways in which the types can be lookalikes or misunderstood. How many of you, let me just stop screen sharing, because you can go look at this on your own screen and have me and the screen up. How many of you are familiar with the centers themselves? Just by show of hands is fine. And my computer's already too hot, even though I just cooled it down. Because it's already 90 in here. It does not like the heat. Okay, so I also am including Q&A. So any questions you may have, I also want to hear and answer for you. One thing that is kind of nice to see about the person asking the questions is to rename yourself and just put in a short version of your name, your nickname, or something of that nature, and then just what instinct you identify with, the tri-type you identify with, and if you know it, your Myers-Briggs. It's a wonderful way to learn from one another, and the very nature of the questions that we ask are often going to be centered around our own type, our own tri-type. So welcome, everybody. Are there any questions just off the top that anyone wanted to ask about anything?
Hi, Catherine. I do have a question.
Okay.
I'm Melissa O'Mara, and I will change my to put my identity in, but I believe I'm a 741, and probably social, social, sexual, and that stacking order. And a question I have for you is just of curiosity. Have you ever done any work with soul typing, which is a body-based way of identifying a different set of 9 types, and 3 head, 3 heart, 3 gut or lower body? I'm just curious if you ever had done any of that work, because if you have, I'd love to. The types don't really quite match, so it's really interesting to kind of try to look at that. And it's very old, kind of work. So.
And it's called Soul Types, And
yeah, soul typing. Yep. And I can send you a link for later. But if you haven't heard of it, that's fine, and that can be
well,
an
I do teach the standpoint of the archetypes, which are also considered soul types.
okay.
I've found that I would describe them a little differently, but it's yeah, all three centers, three types, nine. It would be wonderful to look at. There's probably some correlation at some point.
Yeah.
With anyone that really works with systems, there's always patterns of three.
Yep.
Beginning with the Trinity, there's 0, 3 in the Law of Three, and the Law of Seven are just throughout anything in kind of self-help spiritual methodologies. So I would definitely make this hypothesis without knowing exactly what I'm doing, but I will go look it up when we finish.
Yeah. I'll find the right one. It's New Equations work. New Equations is the website, newequations.com.
I have seen it then.
Yeah, and the thing that's different is that the type is that the testing is a body-based test. It's a yeah, so it's a little bit different as opposed to answering a lot of questions. So it's more about where are you strongest in terms of your ability to resist being sort of pushed over.
And it's like a man and a woman that teach it, and
yes,
in Northern California.
I think so. Yep.
The pushing over, yeah. I know exactly what you're referring to. And the only thing I would say different about that is that a lot of their typings, if you couldn't be pushed over, you were innate. But I found it was the self-pres gut types that couldn't be pushed over.
Interesting.
And the sexual subtypes, because I saw them do it with a lot of people. They even came and spoke at a study group that I've been in for many, many years with people accurately typed. The sexuals would look at the I'm trying to think of his name.
I'll get it in a minute. The
Yeah.
co-founders, yeah, Alan.
Yes, Alan. Yeah,
yeah,
like a 2. He would say that was type 2. But sexuals are trying to make a connection, and a 6 might do it out of fear. So it was really meaningful.
yeah.
And I knew his work from long, long ago. If he probably has a lot of new information, I don't know. But the minute you said new equation, and he didn't call it soul types then, which is why I didn't recognize it at first. But oh yeah, if there's anything in the world of Ennea, I probably have pursued it. One way.
All right, thank you.
And Alan may have made modifications that make it much more accurate too. So I don't want to give the impression that he's mistyping. It's a different way of looking at the types. It's very meaningful. It does identify kind of that core quality that we have.
Essence. Yeah.
The only problem I found, if someone was kind of frail due to illness, it just wasn't as good at getting their core type. So they could still be a really strong type, but so there are factors with everything that we always have to consider. But yeah, now I want to go look at it with fresh eyes and see what
we can talk more.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm Dina from Capitola, California.
Uh-huh.
And hello. And I believed I was a 378 for a long time. Like 3, I could give you my resume. That just so dials for me. And I recently did your true self assessment test, and I came out a 368.
Was it true self or my new one?
True self.
The difference with my test with true self is that it wasn't delivered the way I intended, and they didn't ask the questions. It's where you get the words. You You give 5 adjectives to describe yourself, your greatest strength, your greatest weakness. And all those adjectives identify where someone's attention is. And they deliver the test in a way where they put a point system in such a way that if you had different top choices, but you consistently chose a type as your second choice, it would say that's your type. And when I do a type point system like that, I weight the top type much higher so that all the second choices don't become first choice. And that's a problem with the way that test is based. However, the most dominant type, strongest type, is the 368, the tritype combination. I call them the justice fighter because they're willing to go the distance. They're, especially if they're social, they're very reactive. But what happens is when you have 3 and 8, the 6 automatically becomes counterphobic 6. You can't have a tritype with 8 and not have the 6 more counterphobic. So when you took the test, the question is what 6 card you identified with. Because if it got into your tritype, it would be very rare with true self. That was one of my complaints. I wanted it programmed so that I could capture the 6s through the patterns and the way they take the test. So if you know you're a 3, do you think you're social?
I can be social, yeah. I lean towards self-pres, but I can definitely be social.
Yeah, the self-pres 3 is the toughest self-pres type. And that's because when you combine 3, which is going after whatever they need in the way of resources at a high level of quality, because it's 3 and self-pres coming together, that the 3 either accumulates kind of the best of everything, or they can be coming from the opposite side of self-pres and fearing scarcity. So the 3s become workaholics a lot of times because of this fear of scarcity. That, okay, I'm working now, but something could happen and I wouldn't be as successful, so I need to stay ahead of the game, always a little better than I was before, constantly raising the bar so that I can ensure, as a self-pres 3, that I don't go without the resources I need. And those resources are very specific to each 3. But they generally suit what you do in life. Like, what do you do?
I have a company that I've just passed into the family to my son, and I've been working. Thank you. He's 31, and I'm still doing operations for him. But yes, the overachiever and everything you just described is perfect. The last Q&A that I attended, now I'm actually doing success coaching. So to answer that question.
Perfect.
Yes. But the last Q&A, I remember someone asked something about a 6, and it was like, well, that depends what data I got. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I do that all the time. And so then I started questioning that 6 and 7, even though I do have that compulsive factor too. So I'm still playing with that, but I wondered like what the key differences were between the 3, 7, 8.
Oh, there's a huge difference. There's more kind of smoothing things out when you have the 7, because 7 and 3 are positive. The 3 is the most positive type. 7's the most upbeat type. So it's an upbeat, positive type that asserts for what they want. And they want to be the person creating the world that they're creating, whether it's a business or community, depending on the instinct. Whereas the 368, the 6 in the tritype, is looking for the we factor, the team factor, even if it's self-pres. You know, so we really have to look at the difference between self-pres 7 and self-pres 6. And it's huge. Self-pres 6 is making their world smaller so they don't have as much to manage. They're not as threatened by incoming, what would they call it? Actually, it's the fear of blame. So the 6 is defending against being blameworthy. Instead, they'd rather be trustworthy and loyal and dedicated to those that support them. Or it might be what they identify with, so the company that they work with. If they're loyal to that company, they're identified with it. If they're loyal to a particular alma mater, they will very comfortably wear things that represent their own alma mater, even if they're not social. But if they are social, they will really wear the shirts that align with their small group. So if we think of elite forces, many are the 638, that tritype for sure. And what happens, they work in teams of 6 people, sometimes fewer, where they can act as one. And they're doing things that would be viewed as potentially dangerous or not optimal circumstances. But if you have people who have your back and you're after the same thing, hyper focus, you can act as one and prevail. And the 6 in the tritype creates this desire to be one with whatever they believe in. So the 3, 6, 8 I'm talking about. They're strong. Even if they're the 6, they're strong. And they, as I said, they will not type as 6s. They will type as 3s or 8s. And the reason for that is the description. They match 8 better than the 8 does. And if they know they're a super achiever, they will get that they're 3. But there's a drive, there's a push forward that is more targeted. Whereas with the 3, 7, 8, there's the desire to build this like mega world of their making. So it's not narrowing it down to the select few. It's building something that goes to many. Even if the creator is self-pres, maybe they'll feel just more open with the select few. But 368 does not have that same drive that the 378 and the 358 do to create a world, and ideally a big world. Now, are there exceptions to the rule? Absolutely. But that 6 brings a need for camaraderie. And if you are the 6, what you might consider is that your 8 has a 7 wing, and your 6 would have a 7 wing. And then that brings a feeling of 7. And because the 3, one of the errors of the transmission of the Enneagram, Naranjo felt that we had later teachers, because there were 20 years he did not teach. He taught the Enneagram when he'd first learned it. He only knew it a year. And he taught a study group for a year and a half. And then he didn't teach in the US anymore for 20 years. Then he came back after 20 years because he was kind of tired of the errors that were continuing, where he'd been misquoted, and whole book had been built around his misquote and a lot of other things. So in 1996 he came back, and what he said was that people that had learned the Enneagram from those that had learned from him, that didn't have as much as he did. And think about it, when you first learn something, how much mastery do you have? I know I thought I had a lot after a year and a half, but boy, I would not compare it to what I know now. So that's what happened with Naranjo. 20 years into it, at that point, about 25 years into working with the Enneagram, 23, I guess, he discovered some key things. And those of us that did not have access to Naranjo in those 20 years learned from people who wrote books or taught courses, and they didn't have everything from Naranjo because he had not come up with it yet. But he said that we misunderstood the sexual 3, that we describe the sexual 7 the way he sees the sexual 3. And that between 3 and 7, the 3 is ambitious, and it's on the feminine side of the Enneagram. 2, 3, and 4 are feminine. 5, 6, and 7 are masculine, and then the gut types are ambiverts. They're both masculine and feminine. They're the neutralizing force. So even though we think of the 8 as the most masculine, it's that the 8 is the most assertive and the most in the assertive center. So I'm going to include a lot of this. I'm going to do, I think, a 5-week course on the centers, which really isn't enough, because if you can imagine what it would take to go through 96 minimum. I probably actually have more than 96. That was just in one folder. But
well, I feel there's so much of you said that resonates for me, that insatiable drive. I do find that I'm more masculine, but as I'm evolving and getting more aware and practicing, which is mastery, practice, then I can tap into my feminine.
So the question is, do you see yourself as a thinking person? Do you have thoughts that repeat? And
I see with my heart, but I think with my head. Like, I know things I can't explain. I just, like, intuitively, for safety, like, just, yeah.
Did you say intuitively for safety?
Yeah, intuitively for safety.
So that goes back to the need for safety and security. You probably chose my card that had safety and security on it for the 6, but I'd sure like to see your results.
Yeah.
I could tell you so much. And take my new test and see if you come out the same.
Okay.
That's just at Enneagram Tritype Test.com.
Okay.
All right. Then you can tell me in the next Q&A what you found.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I had a question.
Sure.
So I heard you mention instincts, Tritype, and the Myers-Briggs, and I realized that I'm least of these 3, the least I'm aware of is the Tritype, and so I think I'm also having a little bit hard time staying with what's been talked about. Could you help me understand a bit on the Tritype?
Yes. You'll also find it on my website, katherinefauvre.com, and there's a page just dedicated to the Tritype. And I give some examples of Tritypes. I actually give all 27 in terms of their names, and then a little paragraph on each one. I have a book on it where there's more information, but as a quick overview, when I was studying the Enneagram, I'm naturally a pattern person. I have genius level pattern recognition. And I found very quickly that there were patterns that didn't match what was being taught. And so I looked everywhere to try and find someone that also saw the pattern. Now, what were the patterns that I saw? When I first learned the Enneagram, a lot was taught about the lines of connection, and there were arrows. And it was taught that there was an arrow downward and an arrow up. And if you were kind of moving into unhealth or difficult behaviors, that you were disintegrating or you were in stress. And that with your main type, 1 in this case, that you would go to 7 for health, or well, actually you go to 7 and 4 would be your 2 types. And the error was stating that 1 was stress and 1 was security, or 1 was integration and the other was disintegration. Naranjo said that he played with that idea in one of the study groups, but in the same study group said, no, it's not true. You use your lines of connection equally. So if you're in a difficult place and acting out, it'll be like your main type 1, but also the 7-4, because it's a system that's like a pinball machine. It's repeating, repeating, repeating. And then we move to another type, so that we have a dominant type in each center. Now, over the years, what happened is Naranjo kept seeing his own patterns, where he recognized that people could be the same Enneagram type, but they still could be so different from one another. So what he did is he took the centers, head, heart, and gut, and then he took a more primal version of each center and put the primal version in self-pres, the primal versions in social, the primal versions in sexual. So that's what people don't know. When he described a type with their subtype, the reason he called them subtypes is they were the same thing amplified. So what do I mean by that? I should have a slide on this one for you to make it easier, because it is kind of visual. So Oscar Ichazo, we kind of have to begin there, began with the trialectics and working with many factors to help people become self-actualized, to understand what processes you were using. And he named these 3 ways of being, the way the organism could be, which is our personality, our body, and everything, in these 3 ways. And the first one was conservation. And they later became known as the gut types, 8, 9, and 1. But he recognized that some people were always focused on the physical world and how they were doing. How am I in this moment? Am I tired? Am I hungry? Am I sleepy? Am I anxious? All body-based, what do I need? And he divided it into the 3 types, 8, 9, and 1, later, not initially. And it determined kind of how you focused on your survival. And it later became known as self-pres and gut type. So that's where it gets confusing. So back to Ichazo. So let me tell you the 3 ways Ichazo named what we now call self-pres, social, and sexual, and we also call gut types, heart types, and head types. I'm going to do it by looking at the core fears, and then it'll make more sense. And if we understand the core fear, it helps us confirm that we have the right type in the lead. If you don't have that core fear, then you may have the right types, but not the one who's running the show necessarily. It says it's green. Do you guys see it with the core issues? All right. So if you imagine the green area as what we now call the gut types, Ichazo called it the conservation types. And the pink types we call heart types. Ichazo called them the relating types. So rather than conserving time, energy, money, and resources like the green types, the heart types are determining how to relate to others. Like, what do I need to do to engage others, to be seen, to be a part of? And the head types are the blue types. And Ichazo called those syntony, but quickly changed to adaptation. Now, what did he mean by these three names? Well, I told you a little about conservation. Just the people that could not settle down, could not do their spiritual work when they were kind of trapped in a feeling that they needed to handle something of a physical level or a financial level, something that would be causing them to feel stress. And then he also found that there were people that would be really stressed if they weren't mirrored, if they weren't seen and validated, and if they had a kind of some sort of break in a relationship. All of us are hurt and upset, but if your defense strategy is to create rapport in relationships, like the 2, 3, and 4, then you're going to be really distressed, and your limbic system is going to, and your cingulate gyrus is going to talk to you basically about the stress of a way that you didn't relate well. Like for the 2, the way you didn't create a rapport with someone, because the 2 needs everybody to like them, and they adapt and alter and change to help everyone feel welcomed. So if someone still doesn't want to be a part of the 2's world, the 2 tries a little harder. And the 2 takes great pride in being able to win people over. But if they don't win someone over, it's very, very stressful to the 2 because they're about relating. The 3 is about relating. And the way they do it is to find an audience. So they figure out what people value, what they want, and what they're good at, and they perfect it. They work very hard to achieve the desired result, the perfect performance. But it's all about wanting to relate with others. Be in a type of connection. Now, connection's a difficult word because we use it for the 2, we use it for the sexual types, we use it for the heart types. So we need to kind of more fully define it. And for the 2, 3, and 4, they want to stay in relationship with others. And they actually do something to be in relationship. So if they make a mistake or there's a conflict and they're out of relationship, it's distressing. The heart types are more the love-hate extreme. And the gut types, the green, are more the right-wrong, good-bad, different opposites. And the blue, the head types, are focused on in-out, safe, unsafe. Who are the people that are safe? Who are the people that are unsafe? And they come with preconceived ideas based on what they've learned or their personal experiences. And it's the head types that see all the structures of like where people are from, to try and figure out why they do what they do, how they're different cultures. Now the center of each center, so that would be the 9, the 3, and the 6, are really, in a way, focused on their center, but their two wing types on either side are either over or under expressing the center itself. So you can see how first Ichazo just had these 3 centers, and he called them instinctual intelligence. And then they were divided into 3 types. And then what Naranjo did is, let's take the gut center. He then divided the 8 into 3 variations of these centers, but more primitive forms. So what's the more primitive form of the gut type? It's self-pres. So gut type is kind of visceral, they move with their body, they're focused on physicality. But the more primitive version is preoccupied with the time, energy, money at a greater level. So if someone is self-pres in the gut center, according to Naranjo, they would be unbelievably preoccupied with their resources. So he made it, step 1 would be green, step 2 would be the types, and step 3 would be the divisions within the type. And I just need to create one of those Enneamaps in that way. I have it on different Enneamaps, but not broken down that way. So what was the more primitive version of the, it went from relational types to heart types. And think about it, whenever you're learning about the heart types, it's always being taught that they're relational. So it's not that things were canceled out, it's that they weren't fully understood. And the same thing is true with the head types. Being social, and people say, wait a minute, how do social and head type relate? Well, head types are calculating everything, assessing 10 of this, 5 of this, what's more accurate, and they're trying to manage a fear of chaos. So they want the data to be able to find their way out of chaos. And so they're looking at all the ways to understand things. And the primitive version of that is social, like social and antisocial. What is it I need to do? Who is going to exclude me? Who is going to welcome me? And it's a very primal biological imperative that we seek inclusion and that we avoid others that are a threat to us. But how do we determine who's a threat? Well, when we grow up, we're being taught that. We may agree or disagree, but it's still an imprinting on us. And we may discover on our own, wow, that information I was given isn't quite right. My own assessment is more accurate. With this additional information, I'm going to change my value system. But the value system is always about others. And in a more neutral way, the role we play would be the head, heart, and gut. The role we have. The subtypes would be the primitive version of the head, heart, and gut. So if you're a double heart, you're more focused on relational things. So if you happen to be a sexual, intimate type and be a 2, then you're really relational. But if you happen to be a self-pres type 4, well, you're going to be a more grounded, visceral 4. Whereas a sexual 4 is double heart. Is this making a little bit of sense? So what happened in the transmission of the Enneagram is that the names did not stay the same. Like conservation was just put as a factor of self-pres or under gut. Because what was promoted was thinking of the head, the heart, and the belly. Head, heart, gut. But it began with Ichazo naming these biological imperatives, what the organism is focused on, and that all of us have all three, but what order are they dominant within us? Having said that, in the primitive form of self-pres, if there were an emergency right now and we were in danger, physical danger, it's instinctual to get out of danger. You're not going to be socially minded in that first second of danger. You're going to be protecting your body. You won't even think about others initially. But once you kind of moved out of danger, you're going to automatically go to what your natural instinct is. And if it's sexual, you're going to look for your close connections. If it's social, you're going to help whomever is in your team or near you, or the more extended family of man, so to speak. And the self-pres people are going to really make sure that they're safe, that their body is safe. And once they're safe, they're going to help other people be safe. And if you look at a great example, people were interviewed after the 2004 tsunami in the Indian Ocean. And the fact that some people survived was extraordinary, that they would survive a tidal wave that was so massive. And what they said, when I believe they were self-pres, is they talked about what happened and how traumatizing it was to them. And clearly, you could see all the signs of PTSD. But there were some people that I would say were self-pres that talked about how terrible they felt, that they couldn't think about anyone else, that other people were suffering near them at the same time. But they had a fear that if they went to these people, that they'd both go down and that neither would survive. And so they felt this primal need that just took them over to try and survive on their own. And once that happened and they were out of danger, they thought very much about others. And then other people said they just couldn't relax if there was anyone else suffering, and that they would risk their own life reaching out to try and help people that were trapped in the tidal surge and needed to be pulled away from it, to be pulled out of danger. And one person that was interviewed that did that was, in my opinion, very social. You know, he got other people to kind of become a bridge. So one person was holding another person who was grabbing the person going by, and together, working together, they could rescue some people. And that's the high side of social. The high side of self-pres is they're going to offer you their resources that, you know, they've discovered. They just are going to struggle in the moment of terror. And then the sexuals immediately would think about their close pair bonds. Now, all of us do that as human beings, but even the sexuals at first would manage, you know, not drowning, let's say, but if they had a child or a friend or someone in a group, they would, according to the closeness, risk not making it by helping their designated other. So that would be, of course, for anyone, their child first. But then their partner or best friend, they couldn't survive without that other person. So they might risk dying because of their significant few in their life. And each type has the defenses, which is a version of self-pres. But after that initial impulse, we then moved to this subdivision, and that's what Naranjo was identifying, that the heart types could be self-pres in certain situations. And that's why he broke out that there were 3 types of 2s, the self-pres 2, the social 2, and the sexual 2. And that was true of all 9 types. So Naranjo brought the subtypes to us. He began with the centers with Ichazo. And he noticed these subdivisions pretty quickly. And in 1971, when he began teaching, which was about 6 or 8 months after he had begun the course with Arica, in Arica, Chile, for those of you who know how the Enneagram of personality really began, was in Arica, Chile. So he only had less than a year of knowledge. And as he worked with more people, he noticed certain characteristics and was hypothesizing these subtypes and was teaching them as they pertained to the people in his study groups. And the study groups were small, so it wasn't that many people. But over 20 years, he really learned much more and changed some of his early assessments. Like in the very beginning, he had reckless for the self-pres 4, that they would be kind of reckless with their body. But after 20 some odd years, he realized it's really the sexual 4 that will risk losing their reputation, everything in the moment, if they feel they're going to lose their intimate relationship. So does that make sense? Now with Tritype, all it is was my knowing the types and the subtypes, but still seeing another quality. And if you look, for example, if I was working with a 9 and I was getting down to their core fears, and if they had core fears that were 6 related, could see all the fears, and they had core fears like the 3, that'd be fine. Maybe they also had a few core fears like the 1 or the 8. Made sense because they had access to it. But if I was working with a 9 and they had the core fears of the 4 as well, and the core fears of the 5, they had no access. No line of connection, no wing. And that's why I started documenting, like, how could these people who knew nothing about the Enneagram drill down, or when I had them drill down, identify the core fears of the 5, 4, and 9. Now, 9 might be the most dominant, but once I started recording that and asking other people, because at the time I was certifying in 3 different schools, but no one had noticed that. They weren't looking at it in the same way. They hadn't done a study on the core fears of each type, because it was thought to be a fear for each type. And I found there's a cluster of fears, and there are even more than I have listed here. So what I'd like to have you do is I'm going to break you out into pairs and just discuss what tritype you think you are and what your stacking is. And then we'll come back and I'll go into the centers more.
Oh, there you go.
I think your question is, you said something like you don't believe in the test, so is there another way to know tritype? And what I did with the test is there's 4 ways that I look at the possible answer. I look at it in terms of these cards, which are have visual pictures with them, and then the keywords the types themselves use. And I deliver them in different ways so that, for example, there are different types of each type. So I tried to represent 3 different versions of a type. And the first way that you're given the test is to choose the top 2 in each type. And then after you've done that, you never see that third card again because you didn't relate to it. And then you're delivered those other card A and card B, your first and second choice, against other cards in different ways. And then you get an answer, a top choice. And then I do your A cards. I have you choose your type for each center, so your tritype. And then I ask you to choose and rank your sentences. So there are 9 basic sentences in groups of 3, and see what you choose. Some people do better with the cards. Other people do better with the sentences. And I also give you instinctual cards and instinctual sentences. And then I programmed in the patterns that types use, in particular where 6 and 9 won't see themselves with certainty. They might think they're a 1 or 3 or 5 or 4 or 2, a 9. 9s can do it too, but it's really the social 6 that has the most trouble, and because they identify with another person or a quality they should have, or another part of their personality. Like, for example, Sean, if you don't mind my saying, you've said INTJ there, and it's very easy for someone with an INTJ to think they're a 5. Now, is it possible? Oh yeah, a lot of 5s are INTJs and INTPs. But if you have a strong feature in your Myers-Briggs, like let's say it's ENFP, it's pretty hard to not think of yourself as having 7 in a tritype. And many do, but I've met others that do not. So it's a matter of getting those qualities accurately in place. But what the test does is it alerts you if you need to consider elements of 6 and 9, but it tests really well for the other types, but you still have to confirm it. Now, another way to look at the tritypes is to look at each center and compare and contrast. Like, for example, in the heart center, are you preoccupied with meeting people, greeting people, welcoming people, and being in rapport with people, where you're doing the initiating? Even if you're shy, you'll smile or make a connection of some sort. That's the 2. The 3 is about figuring out the way they can excel in terms of performing. If they're the funny guy in the family, really perfecting their funniness, or whatever it is they do well, they then really try to do better for others to acknowledge. And then the 4, for example, really needs to be exclusive. And the word unique is now overused, but it really does apply to the 4. Because the 4 wants to be one of a kind. How can I be a one of a kind? What is it about me? And it is usually a way the 4 is accomplished. They won't say that they're achievement oriented. They will say they're accomplished of something. It has a higher level of refinement. So that you just have to see, of those 3, what was dominant. And then you do the same thing with the head center. Of the head types, which do you relate to the most? And of the gut types, which do you relate to the most? And that's part of it. But the problem and the confusion is when you identify with your line of connection. Like as an 8, my line of connection is to 2 and 5. So if I was an 8-2-5, I'd say, hey, what's the point of tritype? Well, it's because I'm already using that combination, so it wouldn't be as important to me. So an 8 that has 825, they're good. A 6 that has 3 and 9, 6, 3, 9, they're good. And it creates consistency. But when we were first teaching the Enneagram, we only identified 18 of the 27 combinations. So if you learned about the Naranjo's antipodes, which really came from Ichazo, but types that share the same focus, like 1, 3, and 5, are all focused on orderly perfection, methodical understanding of things, being logical. So if you have 1, 3, and 5, you're going to really be very clinical in nature, unless you happen to have a subtype that makes you more interpersonal. As a 1, you would naturally have a line to 4 and 7, but remember it's the 1 bouncing between 4 and 7, with 1 always being in charge. And then with the Tritype, once you recognize your dominant type in your heart center, then you're gonna, let's say it's the 3, then you have to just compare the 3 and 4. Since 4 is a natural line of connection, you have to see which is dominant. Like, as an 8, my natural heart connection is to 2, but 4 wins. I didn't want it to be 4. I was resisting against it. But after I lived with it for a period of time and just pretended I was a 4 for a month, just to see how much 4 I did or didn't have, I had to surrender that 4 was more dominant. And by doing so, I also found the gifts of 4 that I had been pushing down. Because if we don't want to be a type, we're not allowing the gifts of that type either. Most of us just don't want to be the negative part of a type. But having said that, we all use all 9 types, but in what order? And in what level of dominance? I'm going to do an advanced group on people who know their tritype and work with how to understand the weakest tritype or the tritypes you work with. So in a way, what I'm saying, Hannah, is you have to do the same thing you did with discovering that you were a 1. You have to compare and contrast. And I think Naranjo was an exceptionally good teacher in the terms of being an INTP rather. But some people struggled with it. But he compared and contrasted whatever he was talking about. So if he was talking about a feature of type 3, he would contrast it to another type that maybe was similar, but how they were different. Or he might contrast it with a type that was the opposite. And with the Enneagram, it works best to compare and contrast. So it's a matter of choosing. And then when you rank it, you know that your dominant type is number 1. But the other 2 types in your tritype are interesting. You might have 2 really close, just like with the instinctual stacking that I came up with 25 years ago. I discovered we didn't have just 1 instinct. We had all 3, but we used them in a stacking order. So there's 1 that was dominant in the CEO, and the other 2 were used in an order of preference. But with both tritype stacking and type stacking, they're happening quickly. It's not like you're a 1 and then it's, oh, all right, now I need to move to 3. Oh, now I need to move to 5. That's a conical way of looking at the tritypes, which I do want people to understand, but it can be elusive if you have 2 really close at the top. If you do, it was a hard time choosing your type, or you've mistyped and identified with the other type that's your second type. Or you can have 1 type really dominant. I'm imagining a little graph here. And if it's really dominant, you get your type. If your instinct is really dominant, you get your instinct. It's really easy to determine what you are. I read about 8 and done deal. There's no way I'm a 1 or not. So that was easy for me. And other people that I was sharing the Enneagram with would struggle. And those that would struggle would be the 6s. Now, the 6 that knew she was afraid, she got that she was a 6. But one friend thought she led with type 1. And it wasn't until I introduced what I had found with Tritype that she realized she was actually a 6 with 1 a very strong 2nd. And she knew she was really kind of 4-ish. So she had trouble deciding between those 3 in the beginning, but that is her Tritype because there's 1 from each center. Now, why do we need Tritype? Well, all you have to do is really look at the symbol. And I will share that again. I'll share the other one actually because that's what I want to talk about. All you have to do is look at this, and if you don't know why the lines are this way, you don't realize that it's a map of movement in the universe. So it's the law of 0, the circle, inclusion. It's the law of 1. It's the law of 3. And the law of 7, which is 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7. And it repeats 1, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7. And mathematically, it's to infinity. So putting these patterns together is how mathematicians or people that are interested in understanding movement in the universe, this is how they understand movement, how they measure change. But Ennea means 9, and the gram is graphed, so you could still have 9 points, not in this way. So if I look at, before I go to the other one, so there's already a problem because if you look at type 4, they have a line of connection to 1 and a line of connection to 2. Where's their heart type? I mean their head type. They don't have one. They assume it's 5, but there's no line of connection for the 4 to a head type. There's no line of connection for a 2 to a head type. There's also no line of connection for a 7 or a 5 to the heart type. We all use all 3 centers, which is why Ichazo added trifix. Not in the beginning. He began just with the centers. Then he added the types, and then the fixations of each type. And then over the years, he found a version of what I found. And that is we all use all 3. It's just which one do we use in the other centers. And if you have 2 heart types, in other words, that are different, in other words, my 2 is my natural line, but actually 4 was more dominant. What's important is to understand my 8 is always bouncing between the 2 and the 5. It's not that I stop being an 8 and I start being 2-ish. It's that my 8 moves towards people instead of against. And against isn't always a bad thing. It's actually a good thing too. It's holding your own. But it was taught that if I moved to 5, that I was unhealthy, that I was stressed and overwhelmed. But I do all my research at 5. It's an 8 version of research. So if we want to make it simpler, it's looking at the needs and the fears. So in the heart center, what do you what do you fear the most? What do you need the most? Do you need affirmation? And if so, do you need it the way a 2 needs it, the 3 needs it, or a 4 needs it? And I gave you that earlier as an example. And if you're actually the 6, rather than the 3, let's say, you would recognize that you have a need for reassurance more than you ever knew. And affirmation and reassurance can be similar or appear similar, but they're actually quite different. Heart types give compliments. That's why the 2 was called ego flat, for ego flattery. Because the only way to create rapport with a lot of people quickly is to flatter them, to say something nice to them. We all respond to someone seeing us, if it's in a good way. And so the 2's strategy is to be gracious to people, to be welcoming, to say something, even if it's just introducing themselves. So they're giving affirmation and they want affirmation. Now, I once had a 4 say to me, this was Ted Dobson, who changed his name to Theodore Johnson, the same person. He said that if I gave him a compliment 3 times in 3 different ways, in 3 different circumstances, he knew I meant it. And I said, well, I meant it the first time. I don't give a bunch of compliments. I just tell the truth of my experience. He said, yeah, but I'm a heart type. So I give compliments to create rapport. And maybe you were trying to create rapport. I said, well, I wasn't so good at that. I had to take classes on creating that positive rapport. But I later asked the other heart types, do you need to hear something 3 times to believe the person? To really believe they meant that compliment? And most heart types will say yes. That once is nice, but if they hear it a couple more times, it lands. Why is that? It's because the heart types identify with their false self. Now, we all have a mask, but the heart types tend to take their mask to be who they are. And it isn't who we are. But if it's effective, and heart types are very effective at creating rapport with people, it's kind of hard not to do that. Let me just close this out now that everyone's back. So you can then kind of experiment with whatever type you believe you are. So I had to choose between 2 and 4. And once I've just, in a way, pretended that I was a 4. So whatever came up for me, I would say, oh, well, because I'm a 4, and then I'd give the 4 answer. And a lot of times it felt really alien, but there were far too many times when it felt accurate. So I knew it was 4/2. Yeah, I reach towards people, I help people, but how do I help them? I help them with my intellect, like a 4.
I see.
Not my heart. I'm not going to bring chicken soup unless you ask for it, or you're really sick. I'm not going to make it myself. I might go buy it for you, or get someone who knows how to make it and bring it. It's not my strength. But the 2s are really good at seeing what people need and giving it. But if it's a self-pres 2, they're going to give a physical thing. If it's a social 2, they're going to show you by including you. If they're a sexual 2, they're going to create a more intimate rapport, a more exclusive, private, kind of, in a way, a little bit of a secret rapport. Like, just you and I know this. It's the 2 of us. It's you and me. So everything's a pattern of 3s. And we are our type. So the 1 is really just always dealing with the tension of 9, which is to go along and get along, and the 2 saying you need to reach out to people and create rapport. And then the 1 has to decide, well, wait a minute, I can't go along to get along. There are times when things need to be just taken care of, and I need to focus on that, so I need to be logical, because 9 and 2 are not logical types. The 1 brings the logic to this, so the pressure of the 9 and the 2, 2 other focus types come together, and then the 1 is the result of that tension, because it is continuous. And if we saw it 3-dimensionally, you would see how they all connect. At one of the conferences, there was someone that had made a 3-dimensional Enneagram. It was amazing, because you could see the way the types connected. So with respect to Tritype, I started to tell you how there are, Naranjo taught their antipodes, and that would be like 5 and 1, a type across from you, of the hexad types, by the way. So 5 and 1, both logical, focused on perfection and doing things orderly and being more detached from what you're doing. The 1, however, is a gut type, so they're focused on the environment and the way they need to behave, being appropriate. The 5 doesn't worry about appropriateness unless they're social 5. Instead, they worry about how much they're going to be able to hold on to themselves. They feel easily invaded. And so they would rather, in a way, symbolically cut off a part of themselves to hold that self-sufficient autonomy that the 5 wants. And yet they'll think alike in many ways, but their centers are different. And then the other type is the 4 and 8, their line of intensity. They're both very intense types, and one's in the heart center, one's in the gut center. And so what is it about, this intensity? It's about whether you're going to get what you long for. The 4 feels they can't assert enough to get what they want, so they pine for what they don't have. The 8 says, I can't endure longing. I have to take what I need or not need it, and make myself not know it, not need it, which is denial. And what's interesting is the 8 has much more longing than they realize, and the 4 is much more aggressive than they realize. It's just what we're identified with. Now, the third one in the hexad types are 2 and 7, and they're the kind of the upbeat characters in the Enneagram, and they kind of fly above, and they identify with fairies and elves and things that have wings, and they like the overview, and they're focused on connection. But just as the 1 is trying to build an environment that's ideal, the 5 is trying to hold on to themselves and moving away. Well, the same is true with the 2 and the 7. The 2 is creating the bridge, the rapport, and the 7 is anxious in avoiding that full connection. They can talk about it and create it mentally, but that heart connection feels dangerous to the 7, because you might have to be unsatisfied and go without something, which is very hard for 7 to do. 7s, are struggling with the more, and variety is better. So being trapped into just one spice rather than having a whole cabinet of spices is distressing to a 7. Like an 8 might just say, well, I only like mustard, forget the rest of them. And that's how you can see the difference between 7 and 8. When it's an 8 with a 7 wing or 7 with an 8 wing, it'll be how much variety is needed. And the 1 does what they should, the 8 does what is true for them, regardless of the rules, and the 7 gets around the rules. So they're not blatantly fighting the rules, but they are the quintessential archetype of the person that's rebellious in terms of anarchy. It's the 7 that inspires a charge. Like if you saw a play like Les Mis or a movie, but the play in particular, they show a 7-ish character that's leading the belief that you need to break from the way things are. But it really takes the 8 leading that, the 8 or the 1, and the 9s and 6s supporting it, and the 5s with the strategic planning, and the 4s with that recognizing what is unique to, let's say, the enemy, and identifying those characteristics, and the 3s being willing to, the 3 and 6 actually, 6 plays out a lot because they are the loyal troopers, so to speak. But the 3s like willing to go and do something dangerous for that recognition, and the 2s creating rapport among those that are together. So it's always working at all times. But I said to Naranjo that Hurley and Donson had compared the Hornevian types to these centers, and that and there was another combination called the Harmonics. Are you all familiar with those? Let me go back to you guys as a group. Oh, I'm not sharing right now, am I?
You are sharing.
Oh, it's not, I don't have the green thing. Okay. So and he said, well, what were Hurley and Donson using? And I gave him the example that 3, 7, and 8 were the assertive types, and that I was starting to mix the harmonics, and the 1, 2, and 6 were more the adapting types of Karen Horney's work, and that the 4, 5, and 9 were the more withdrawn types. And he liked that. He did think that 4, 5, and 9 had more resignation, and he really, really liked Karen Horney's work. It's throughout his book he references her work, because she really identified these emotional needs. But when I re-examined, I wrote a whole article on Karen Horney and the Enneagram, but over time I've discovered that she missed the other types of aggression, like the counterphobic 6 has. And then it made sense that there were tritypes missing. But the other group of 9 types, broken into 3 different combinations, are the harmonics. And the harmonics were types that seem similar, but they're different because they're from a different center. And what's really important is it's always including types from other centers. It's never putting like the 1 and 9 with the 3, because the 1 and 9 are in the same center. So if you look at harmonics, or you look at Hornevian, or any comparisons, it's always 3 types and 1 of each center. Now I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I'll give you a perfect example. There were people disputing which types were the most assertive on the Enneagram. And everyone agreed with type 8. And they did agree that 3s were very assertive. But where they were disagreeing is if the third type was 1 or 7. Now, we all know sevens can be very strong and assert what they believe is the right way to do things. But if we're holding to the pattern of three and trialectics, which the Enneagram of Personality was built on, then it has to be the seven. Because if you compare 1 and 8, you're going to choose 8. And if there was no head type represented, then it wouldn't be an interflowing trialectic example. So if you just even took a box and put the 2, 3, and 4, and then the types, it's so visual, it makes me want to go get the box. We have time. Hold on. Let me see if I can go quickly find a way to show that to you. And you'll see that they were always there. We just didn't see them. And it's looking at the patterns of 3 against 3, like if you were to do tic-tac-toe, the way there's 9 cubes, and then the order which we put them in. So just imagine tic-tac-toe. And if we just had the types on the top and one of the sides, and then it creates the other type. So all I'm doing is beginning with a square. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay, so I can do it any number of ways. I'll do it this way. But you need always one from each center. Hold on. So let's just do it this way. Can you see it?
Yes.
All right, so what we've got here, if you look on an angle, we have one of the tritypes.
Up a little bit, Catherine. Just a little bit more up even.
Can you see it?
Perfect.
So it was always there, that 4, 6, 9, but we didn't know how to see it. But I've got 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, 9, 1. And it creates that. Now the other direction, it creates a known tritype. 2, 6, 1. Can you all see that? So we've got what you expect, the tritypes going across by 2, 7, 9, 3, 6, 8, 4, 5, 1. It was always there. And with just a few boxes, we cover it all. Now, I will go into this in the advanced class more so that you can see, but I wasn't just making up tritype. Ichazo wasn't just making up trifix. There's actually, if you believe in the mathematical aspects of the Enneagram, it was always there. So in this way alone, I get 2, 7, 9, 3, 6, 8, 4, 5, 1, and 4, 6, 9, and 2, 6, 1. Now, if I do another box and reorder them under the same principle, I will get all 27 tritypes. I won't get 29, I won't get 28, I won't get 23, it's 27. And it's just the pattern of 9 divided into 3 different patterns. The whole time, centers and then each type within each center. and then you get the 27. It's pretty magical, and it validated what clients were saying without even knowing the Enneagram. When I did my first study, I sent to approximately 400 people, but they were all people that had attended a course I was in, or a certification program, or workshop, or people I knew that I had taught the Enneagram. So they knew the Enneagram. They kind of knew what to expect. When I got those answers, I thought, wow, these are great. And that was, from that questionnaire. I thought, well, these are really great. But they know the Enneagram. How can I be certain they're not influenced by the Enneagram? Because we are. We end up taking our type to be part of our identity. It fits very neatly into our persona. That's why we hate to give it up if we decided we're a certain type and then actually we're using the defense strategy of another type. But I did find words, phrases, and pictures that had never been taught. And when I had people that were in different parts of the world send me the same picture of a cigarette ad that said, "You've got merit," and there's a person going like this saying yes, and there were three things. Oh, success. And people cut out and sent me parts of it, or they sent me the whole ad. And it was a very popular ad in 1995, so it was in all the magazines. But it still took threes to cut it out and send it to me. No other Enneagram type sent me that ad. But what threes liked about it was success and merit. Boy, they want to have merit. In fact, they want to have a quick rise in the world they're in based on their merit. That they worked hard and they've earned it, and they want it quick. They want to be the all-star. It's part of the identity of the three. That's what we need them to do. And then I thought, how could someone in Australia, someone in Germany, someone in the Midwest, someone in California, and I think there was also someone on the East Coast, not New York though. Well, I'm drawing a blank. But I had, I think, initially 3 and then 5, and then it kept increasing the more people that I asked for images, but they were all 3s. And then that happened with the other types, not as perfectly, because there wasn't ads that were that amazing that would be in all magazines that would describe a type. But there was just a way in which we see ourselves, and that is how those collages emerged. I never intended to create collages. I was just getting the pictures and phrases, and I was just going to teach them in a class once I got them all. But what happened instead is there were so many pictures, there were so many words and phrases, and it expanded my understanding of the types, and I ended up making collages as a result, so that I could share with others all the different things that I saw. Now, why did that become really important? I'll tell you. They came up with words that we had never heard, according to the types. Like, it wasn't in the early literature that 4s want to be tasteful. In all the years, I've only had one person that wasn't a 4 use that word as one of her adjectives. Let me go to that 3 ad so you can see why it was so critical. And there weren't a lot of 3s that participated in the study. I had to go get them. It was the smallest number of people, and they were just too busy. But if I captured them at a training, or I went to them and said, please, don't you want to be represented? And they ended up doing it because I asked. But here's the word. It was yes, yes, yes. I think awards was in that ad, and success, this one, and you've got merit. So some people sent that whole ad, and other people just said you've got merit. It depended. But I put you've got merit in here twice because the threes were talking about this need for merit, and it wasn't an adjective that was used initially. It, of course, describes a three, but it was adding another dimension. They gave me Success magazine. Each type ended up giving me a magazine. Or they found a football player, I forget his name, that had a three jersey in the victory pose that threes identified with. If I was to try and go and create this by myself, it would take forever. But, I mean, now it probably wouldn't. But at the time, it was introducing material and information that was really key. For example, if you look in this left corner, it's American enterprise, which threes would be attracted to, work, which they'd be attracted to because they're workaholics, but there's a guy biting his fingernails. And I said, why this magazine and not one showing someone all successful in a certain pose? And the person that sent it was a self-pres three, and he said, well, because this is what I hide. This is what is secretly going on with me, that I can just have so many irons in the fire or doing so many things that I risk failing at things. I may think I've got everything covered, but if you're trying to do as much as I'm trying to do, I can't relax. I have to be doing something. And if I'm doing that much, I can be anxious. Maybe not in the way that a six is, but definitely anxious. Is there a three in the group that identifies with this hidden part? That you want to show the victory part and the working part, like getting everything done, but that there is a part that's anxious that you just don't show the world, that you carefully conceal and quickly turn any negative into a positive. Remember, the three is more positive than a seven. We talk about the seven reframing, or the seven not liking negativity, but it's the three that has all the promotional slogans, and what they want is hope. So when I was talking to this man when he sent this, I said, okay, I'll put hope with it because that counteracts that fear. And the heart center is the center of hope. The head center is the center of faith. The gut center is the center of charity. So again, these things aren't random. So do we have any threes that are still here that identify?
Yes. I'm Janice, and yes, I am.
Okay, Janice, I need to see you. So let me move this out of the way a little and see if I can make you guys bigger. Yeah. Okay. All right, Janice. What would you say about that?
Yeah, I do keep very, very busy. Even when I'm on a Zoom call, I'm sort of multitasking because as someone who's self-preservation, I'm always a little bit wary of people seeing that I'm really a bit tired. And I don't like to admit to too many people that I'm close to burnt out sometimes, especially during this COVID.
Yeah, I bet. Like, what are you doing? Is your job one that you can keep doing?
I count myself very lucky. I'm very grateful. I still have a job. I teach in a community college, and so we have to move everything from face to face to go online, and they expect the same thing for the fall semester. We've got lots of very helpful hints on how to learn to do things, and there's not a lot of time to process it. But because I'm trying to effective change in the students, I don't feel I can let them know that I'm close to burnt out, that it's not as easy as it looks. It's taken a lot of effort. I'm up late and I'm early in the morning, and I really do need to crash. It's almost like this semester ends in 2 weeks. I can give myself permission to crash then, because I really don't want to do it while I still have a paycheck, because there's a lot of people out there who don't have paychecks and who would love to have a job, and I don't want to give that up right now.
Well, actually, you had to do something major because you had to transition all your materials to online. Now, some people may have always, some private schools already had that set up, but I would imagine it would be like creating a whole new job.
It is, and it's the students don't like it, so you're dealing with their frustration. You've got administrators who say, we can do it. And you say, yeah, you don't have to. You just tell us that we have to do it. And if I'm perfectly honest, a lot of the community colleges and universities do specialize in online learning. So for those of us who are face-to-face, for us to go on to step on their territory, we know we're not doing as good a job as they can. And so we're always afraid of losing students, especially in the fall semester. It's like, would you like to go with us trying to do the best we can, or go to the experts? So there's a fear amongst admin about what happens if we, the instructors, don't do a good job. Now, I also mentioned that I already do a lot of online things already, even when I was face-to-face, and people were saying, why you do that stuff? I mean, we do face-to-face, but then here comes COVID. And for me, it was easy to move my stuff online because I already had it. Other teachers had to create it in order to go online and learn. So although I feel sorry for my colleagues who are probably as burned out because now they have to create everything, whereas I've got stuff in the barn.
Yeah, that's really great.
But then the students are resistant. So you may come up with all these great things. They don't want to adopt it. And plus, I don't want my colleagues to hate my guts to say, really? Okay, here's Wonder Woman just walked into the room trying to tell us how to do things. So I have to be very, very careful.
And notice your choice of Wonder Woman. In my first test, any cards test, I had Wonder Woman on the 3 card. A version of a Wonder Woman. It basically a 3 it has so many plates in the air. But it's really great. I appreciated so much the way the types themselves pointed out these things. Like in the case of the finding a picture of someone with a mask. Now, it was meant to be for, someone struggling with who they are, like a who am I. But really, that is what the 3 is trying to convey. I am this. Wait, you don't like this? You like that? Ooh. Oh, okay, I've got that. And it's underneath that is a fundamental fear of failure that leads to isolation, which is devastating to the 3. Because if you don't have, it's the heart type, you don't have that rapport, you don't exist. And each center is trying to exist in a different way. And the 2s, 3s, and 4s are initiating some sort of contact. And then the 5s, 6s, and 7s are looking at how they are different. So they oppose or point out the other perspective. And then the gut types are the point of neutral, where actually what happens to the gut types is we have this, the fear that the heart types have of being invalidated and therefore experiencing grief and shame, as well as what the head types fear, which is being alone, which leads to being potentially in terror and chaos and fear. And so the gut types, it's the 2, the head and heart are merging. And that's why 8s, 9s, and 1s get overwhelmed. And we move from conviction because we are, we think we're thinking. And we think we're feeling, but we're acting. Then we're figuring out why we did something and what we were feeling. And whereas the heart types go with what they feel first, like what makes the heart expand, what makes the heart contract. And head types feel that literally in their head, like what confuses them and feels chaotic, and then what gives them a clear mind. And we all want that in whatever center we're in, but since we all use all three centers, it's true for all human beings. But it's almost like we're overly specialized in one center and one type and one tritype. And boy, do these tritypes bring amazing things. Amazing. Something that I thought was just auxiliary has turned out to be, in some ways, more important than the type itself. Because the type without the tritype does not have the specificity that the tritype gives. The same with the stacking of the instincts. When I learned the instincts, as I said earlier, it was taught that you had one. Only with the teachers that used the instincts, or a whole group of people that came through the Catholic pipeline that had no instincts. And those that did teach instincts, it was just a little paragraph, and it just slightly modified the type. But the type was believed to be the stronger element. Well, after that first study, it became very clear to me that people act like their type in a negative way when their instinct has been triggered. And when we behave badly, where we go, oh God, I can't believe I did that or said that, it's when our instinct was triggered and the wound, the fear of all three types in our tritype are at risk. I challenge anybody to be cool, calm, and collected when that happens, because biologically it feels too dangerous. So we're going to go into finding a way to discharge the adrenaline. And that's why I found it to be really important. Let's see, what do we have here? We have two. Let's go to 2, just by comparison. And why the 2 became so hard for me to put the board together. When I first looked at it, can you see the full board?
Yes.
Okay. Let me just change my, so I can see the full board too. So what I thought was inconsistent, meaning a handshake, polar bear, someone with really refined features but saying please me, and people that were happy. And oh, this was another one, by the way. This picture of the woman with the bows, with the heart buttons and the polka dots and the hat with the polka dots, was all one ad. So this was the other example of how types that didn't talk to each other chose qualities of the same ad. And what they were addressing is their desire to create enough attention so that you're in conversation with the 2. And then it made sense to me when the 2 said, no, don't you understand? We have to do what will get us engaged in a conversation with someone else. But I was looking at, wow, the difference between the fairy godmother and the princess. Yeah, there are 2 different types of 2s. But actually, internally, all 2s are very generous givers. And at the same time, they want to be the princess and given to, or the queen, as the case may be. And they really are the same person. They're just the dichotomy. And the woman selflessly bathing a child, that image, and someone decked out in sunglasses, and you can see a reflection of someone else that's decked out, seems like they're different. But the only way they're really different is by instinct. This is more the self-pres 2, and this is more the sexual 2. But notice how the 2s wanted me to put please me with this picture. And then they identified that the world of Barbie is very 2, in the sense that all the things Barbie could do. Barbie really was a 7 in her build originally and what she was doing, but she kind of became a 7 with 3 because there were so many things Barbie could dress in, all her outfits and her adventures. But the world itself of Barbie and the other dolls that were, Skipper and Ken and all of that, it's really the world of 2. And it wasn't until the 2s told me that I really got it. The other thing is that this is also the 2. She's often mistaken for an 8. There's the strong 2 that gives their advice. What they're giving to you is advice. It might not be a little present, but they think it's a present because it's important to have that communication. But if they're definite, they often have 8 in the Tritype, but they can be mistaken for 8s. They can even think they're 8s. But with an 8, you're not going to get someone in a kind of a floral dress and chunky beads and a lot of makeup and hair. It would be very rare. The 8 would choose one or the other, whereas a 2 is going to, especially like a 2, 7, 8, they're going to have all kinds of color and patterns and design. Now, by comparison, we have some 1s here. Look at the difference in the board. To me, it's okay. I see the rigidity. I see the woman sitting properly. I see the man in the right upper corner that is has that quality of, the silver-haired, wise person. There's a lot of singular pictures. There's only one picture down here. Now, this is another ad, actually, where it was used for the 1 and the 7, where there were a group of 4 people doing different things. The 7 used it because it was variety. The 1s chose this picture because of the proper element, or the reason for this magazine, cutting out this magazine, is that it was fun with a purpose. And at least where I grew up, and when my kids grew up in California, Northern and Southern California, if you went to a dentist's office or a doctor's office, this magazine was there. And a lot of people recognize it. But what was key for me is how many 1s said that they identified with the heart. But it wasn't in clothing like the 2s. It's the purity of the heart. Like, what symbol did they like the most? It was the heart for its purity. Now, there'd be other things too, so I put a couple hearts on there. Whereas when we go back to the 2 board, it's on the shoes or it's on the top, and it's like telegraphing, I'm a heartful person. And the morals and the values and the rules and manners. And then what struck me was all the wings. The good boy, of course, has wings. The angel has wings. The little babies with wings. The Cupid has wings. The elephant has wings. Of course, there's birds and butterflies. Then there are the bear is holding, well, an angel's talking to the bear with wings, like a guardian angel. And the Cupid's here with wings. And I think there might even be more that I'm just not seeing at the moment. Oh, the little girl on the plate has wings. That stood out unbelievably. How do people, again, who don't know each other, they were never taught that type 1 likes wings or angels, because we think of the 2 liking the angels. But what the 1s liked was the innocence. So seeing a baby with angels, or there being a child, the vulnerability of the child was important to them. And they all commented on this picture of the little girl on the plate. It's actually a plate. And they said, yeah, look at how unhappy she is. I never noticed it. I just thought it was a little girl on a plate and that the 1s related to it. And the person who sent it to me included a perfect angel. They may have even been together somehow because they look color-wise like they match. But when the 1s looked at the board, they said, oh no, it's terrible pressure to be good in every circumstance. And that when you're a child, invariably you're going to make mistakes, even no matter how hard you try. You're going to be bad. You're going to do something where you're in trouble. And that it's really hard because the 1 is trying so hard to meet the standard of the world that they're growing up in. And then around age 7, the 1 kind of determines that other people's standards are not high enough to protect them from making a mistake, from being criticized. So they have standards on standards. And it's all to avoid the painful experience that goes to the heart when we're criticized. But just the feeling of each board was so very, very different. I notice we have a 4. With the 4, something similar happened. The pictures immediately seem more dramatic. What stuck out is there was so much of a feeling of red, kind of a black, white, or dark color with red. And if you think, or fuchsia, which is still the red family down here, and you know, a child as well. I found it very interesting the way the types would find the child version of what they felt. And in this case, you know, a prisoner of pain. Many 4s felt that when they were children. But people that aren't 4s can grow up in a very sad environment and mistype as 4s. But either way, they know what it means to be sad. In this case, this person was a 4. Then there was this brown little monkey, and those of you that have been in my classes, you know the significance of that. So what I did is I got all these pictures and words, then I laid them out on these large boards, and the large poster boards. But before they were glued down, I invited people from the community that knew their Enneagram type, and I would ask them to comment on the board, and I wrote it down, and then I brought them in together. So there might have been, I think there were a lot of 4s actually. They really filled the room where I had this, in my office I had a conference area, and they were all the way around the table. I think there were about 9 of them. And the first thing they would do, they would like the drama of it, and then they'd all say, well, why is that monkey there? And I said, should I take it off? And they said, well, we do have sad stories. And I said, well, the person who sent it to me was a self-pres 4, and he said that he tries to be the glamorous person, like if you look at the woman with the lace, but that underneath whatever he wanted to be, let's say if he were a monkey, he'd be a very rare kind of monkey that was special in more than one way. But that secretly, his secret, like the way the three have the secret, was that he was just sad and he was ordinary and trying to be extraordinary. And when I said that to the fours, they said, no, leave him. That is true. We may act haughty like this woman or sad like this woman, but the suffering is a way to have attention without being considered pathetic. This is really important. If we show that we're weak, no matter what Enneagram type we are, we could be rejected. A lot of people don't like weakness. But if we're suffering, it's not weak. It's a state that we all have in the human condition, and it usually inspires in others the kind of energy to move towards the person that's suffering and attend to them in some way. So all 9 types can suffer, but does it become a part of your persona to be recognized as someone who suffers? Because if you really look at this board, there's a lot relating to suffering. And the woman who sent in this picture, it's actually a necklace, but it goes over the head. And the 4 who sent it in said, well, I really love beautiful things, but I can feel trapped behind my need to have this exclusive persona when I really am not that person. I want to be glamorous, or I want to be outstanding in an elegant way, but underneath that is someone who's very ordinary. Now, when she saw this board finished with the brown monkey, she said, yeah, that's what I am underneath the glamour, but I do feel trapped by it. Just like the person who sent in the little girl behind, a window that has bars. It's the very same kind of archetypal image. And even, the 4s who were waiting for that perfect person, the sexual 4s in particular, to even have a knight in shining armor, they said, the person who sent this in is like, that's what we want, but we don't want the cold metal. We want the person to be heartful. So there's so much in every single picture that's on here. And when I laid them out, they kind of became a theme of how they needed to move into each other, and based on color and form, but also on the message that was there. Like these 2 pictures are darker, and this was sent by a male 4, and he said, I want to be in the light. I want to have the light shining on me, but I also want to be mysterious, and I don't know how to do both. So I usually opt for being mysterious. Or the self-pres 4 says, as long as I have the really elegant, expensive things around me, I'm comfortable, because they're telling the world that I'm okay, that I've made it. And there was a Rolls Royce that I just couldn't put on here. There was just no room. These could have been pages and pages, and it would have continued that theme of the social 4 who identifies with their place in society. Just imagine thinking you're doing something minor just to get a few pictures and phrases and to receive all of this. It was just so extraordinary, because each one, the individual pictures, each picture after picture after picture impacted me. In a way, it would have been nice if I could have had the picture and then put it in the collage. because if you just look at the individual pictures, they tell a story, but when you put them together, they tell an incredible story. So what I noticed first about the head types, and in this case the 5, was it was dark like the 4. There were some bright colors added in, kind of like that yellow and green, but it was very compartmentalized. They had the most pictures of all, but they were smaller, so I could fit more of them in. Now, when I was sent this picture of the book with the eyes coming through the book, that was powerful. And this came from a German. And what was really powerful is he has gloves on. You can't see his expressions, but you see the intense eyes. And you may not know this, but the 5 and 8 have the most predatory eyes. So if you're wondering if someone is an 8 or a 5, look at their eyes separate from the rest of their face. There's nothing passive about the 8 eyes or the 5 eyes, and he captured that perfectly in this picture. I added the totem there because there's no place for it to go, and it really needed to be on the collage for the social 5s. But the way they made fun of themselves, the fact that they found this ad with the pen protector and the broken glasses, and it was a very good story because 5s often wear glasses more often than not, which is very interesting to me. And let's say a 6 and a 5 both wore glasses. If the 6 broke their glasses, like broken glasses like this, they would probably try to go without their glasses because they wouldn't want the kids to see they had glasses that were taped. And I don't know when you went to school, but when I went to school, that would automatically be someone that was teased. And 6s struggle with the teasing. Whereas the 5 said, I want to see everything so much that I don't care that it's taped. I may like it when I get a new pair of glasses, but I can only survive in the world if I see everything. So they wouldn't worry about their glasses being taped. They might not like the teasing, for sure. 5s are teased a lot, unless they're the smartest kid in the class, and then they have a certain amount of status. But that was very noteworthy, where they were comparing it to like this 8 and 6, and that the 5 is kind of the mental giant, and they were implying it's easy to take advantage of a 6. So this is a little 6 here, and they were talking about this being the 8, and the 5 can manage either one once they really understand the Enneagram. Of course, they love owls. A lot of them are night owls, which is also interesting to me. It was also interesting in my research on genius that most geniuses are eccentric in some way, usually a lot of ways, and a very large number of them are night owls, and they do their best work when it's quiet, when the world is quiet, so to speak, and when they're alone. And many, many 5s were night owls. Now, they talked about their suffering. Starry nights is the way they suffer, and feeling isolated. And it's not even a man looking forward and looking sad, but you just see his back, and just a world beyond a world where he'd be alone. And this was a bookmark, actually, that a 5 sent me. And he said, this is what I identify with. I want to be a part of, and he was a sexual 5, and he said, I want my relationship. I'm not happy if I don't have my counterpart. And that they go against one another, because my 5 wants to be totally self-sufficient and autonomous, but the sexual instinct wants the twin. And you know who talks about this actually? That's a great example of sexual 5 is Elon Musk. You can find interviews where he talks about how he's not happy if he doesn't have a meaningful relationship, that all the work he does in the world, and he of course is a workaholic because he's involved in a million things, but he needs that touchstone of, you know, a mate, a spouse, to have things feel real. And we don't realize that with the 5s, because they give us the impression that they're loners and comfortable being alone. But the exception is the sexual 5. They find a way to sort of they have a sweet smile, often a closed smile, that invites us in. But they want to be disguised. So you can see the woman down here with the hand over her face. Great choice. And this, I think, was the same ad as this one up here, but 2 different people sending in the picture. I think this was a fashion where you could buy clothing, catalogs back in the days where everything wasn't online. But there was an area of this company, I think it was at Newport News, I don't know, one of them, and Apart was the name of the magazine. Standing apart was the intent. But 5s feel they are apart, and that they just didn't get the book on how to relate in a smooth, easy way. And so if you have 5 in the Tritype, you know this experience. The 6 was interesting because there was a lot of dichotomy, and just like 6 is always seeing opposites. So you see someone really scared going down the rapids. This was perfect because it was an ad that also showed the people that tough it out. And these are the 2 sides of 6. 6 either gives in to the fear and tries to avoid it, or they show it. And the counterphobic 6 tries to hide it and endure. And the counterphobic goes all tough guy. But underneath it, they're still feeling scared, like this guy. The 6s overall, I was astounded. In 1995, 6s believed that the way to be where you couldn't be criticized, this is male 6, would be wearing jeans and a white t-shirt and cool glasses. And a car that was always safe, that no one would make fun of, was a Mustang. So ironically, my son, my elder son, was a social 6 with a 7 wing, and he was 6'2", and I would buy him all these different colors and things that looked good on him, and he'd only want to wear a white shirt and blue jeans. And I said, well, why are you doing this? And he said, well, because otherwise people will tease me about something that I do. And, you know, being individualistic with the 7 and the 4 and the 8, I said, well, so what if they tease you? If it's you and you look good. And he said, no, Mom, I can't. I got to look like everybody else. I got to fit in. And that's the social 6 is trying to match their peers. He didn't give me this picture, by the way. He told me this. And then another male 6 sent me this picture, and I thought, wow. And then when I taught my first class, there was a male 6 in the class who said, oh my God, I felt exactly that way. I feel that way. And I bought a Mustang because it was like a classic and it was safe. And the 2 men didn't know each other. And then that happened over and over and over again. Some variation on, yeah, you have to do what'll make you fit in. This came from a 6. And I said, okay, what's the significance of this picture? And she said, you can't see it? I go, no, you're going to have to tell me. I'll see it after you tell me. And she said, well, I call my friends before we go out. And if they're wearing a black dress, I'll wear a black dress. And that way, if someone puts me down, they're putting them down too. So I won't be alone in being targeted. Now, never in a million years would I think about that myself, because I don't worry about being targeted. I probably should be, but it doesn't occur to me. But 6s on this primal level have a sixth sense about how to kind of eliminate the rough edges that people would challenge or tease. I grew up with a father that teased. It wasn't mean teasing, so I didn't worry about it. And if people were mean in their teasing, my dad just taught me to just blow it off, that it'll be no fun to tease you, or laugh when they tease you, and add to it. And I did, and it was no fun for people to tease me. But had I shown fear, anxiety, discomfort, then you're someone that people want to tease. It's just kind of what happens. It's a part of kind of the elementary school period of age. Begins in about 3rd grade, but it's hitting its peak when we're 10 and 11. And we're beginning the secondary qualities of puberty. And so just prior to full-on puberty, we're figuring out the hierarchy. Who's who fits where, and there has to be an alpha and there has to be an omega in every system. In fact, with a study of wolves, they found that the omega was critical, that the alpha can't survive without an omega, that it's this perfect interacting system. So we could say, here's your alpha 6, here's your omega 6, but in every Enneagram type, they gave me something vulnerable. So the sexual 6s would display more, try to overcome their fear by strength and beauty. The social 6s would try to fit in. My son did give me this one, the buddy system. Perfect for social 6. But I said, what is it about the bears with the glasses? And he said, well, when in life do you have everybody happy at the same time? It hadn't occurred to me. That is a peak experience for social, to have the whole group, in a way, in union. The people that you care about as a social 6, all together, doing the same thing, having fun. It was a perfect picture. He gave me the perfect picture for the social 6 and other social 6s. Oh, yeah. So I called the 6s the 6-pack in this first class, because I found when I was doing all the interviews that 6s liked to group, even if they weren't social. They wanted to group with 3 or 5 other kids, and that would, in a way, band together, and then that's how they'd feel safe. That kind of the way this young woman, she worked for me at the time, did with her friends. Like, okay, if we're all together, I'm not going to be as vulnerable. So what I'm trying to say is I later did a study that I began while teaching at a Catholic high school. I came in and taught the Enneagram. And what I had them do was create the collage without ever telling them about the Enneagram types. Then, after it was all made, I began teaching about the types. Then I asked them to consider what type they thought they were and to see if there were things in their collage that matched it. And it was extraordinary. We naturally choose what we are. Whether it's our instinct, our tritype, or a type, it's going to be in what we choose, whether we know about the Enneagram or not. Who have I not included? The 7 was very sunny, a lot of yellow, a lot of upbeat, and most importantly, a lot of motion. So I got the quarterback with the 7 jersey, but instead of in the victory pose, the 7 is in movement. So if you're ever trying to determine between a lead type of 3 or 7, look for movement. 3s give the pose. 7s must be in a state of change and reframe. And boy, did they love butterflies. Now, 2s love butterflies as well, but they didn't send in pictures of butterflies. So remember with this study, it's also what people will say about themselves, not just how we see the types. And what comes up from the type that they'd be willing to put on a questionnaire when they don't know how it's going to be used. They just kind of had to trust that it would be meaningful. They didn't know how much it would reveal about them. So a lot of times people would choose adjectives and then want to change it so it sounded better. But even if they changed it, it would still be indicative of the type that they had or the tritype that they had. It was pretty astounding to me. And how did I find that out? Well, after I'd sent out the 400 questionnaires, I was astounded at what came back. So I sent out a second email that had another questionnaire in it and said, the study's been amazing. If you have friends that know their Enneagram type, if you'd give them this questionnaire, I'd really appreciate it. And could you, and these people, if they're willing, send me pictures, words, or phrases that match their type? And I wasn't clear enough. And several people of the 400 people, about 50 of them sent back the questionnaire again for themselves. And I thought, oh no, what have I done? I bet the words are going to not be exactly the same. And I went and looked at them, and sure enough, some of the words were the same, some of the answers were the same, but others were different. But when I compared them, the words had the same energy. And then that became a whole nother piece to my study and why I pursued the core fears. Because I realized that we didn't necessarily identify with just one fear. Like the 7s, a great number of them don't have a fear of being incomplete because they don't understand what incomplete means. But if you say to a 7, do you have a fear of missing out? They go, oh yeah. And I said, well, what would happen if you missed out? And then take that thread and it'll lead to being incomplete. And if you're not whole or complete, you're empty. And if you're empty, it leads to the 7 version of being inferior. You're less than. Now what's interesting is this compact is a very important one for 7, where it was an ad to have plastic surgery, and it's a woman looking into her compact and her eyes have wrinkles. And instead of looking at it like she needed plastic surgery, perfect reframing, the 7 said, I look on the bright side, that my wrinkles are my happiness. Or another 7 said, like, her stretch marks were kind of a symbol of the honor of having children, having earned the right to be a mother. And that's reframing. 7s take things and turn them into positives. And they loved 7-Up. I think I have only 2 on here. So I called the 6s the 6-pack and the 7s 7-Up, and those stuck. And other people are using those terms. But 7s totally identify with it. And someone said, oh, do 7s drink more because there's, Seagram 7. But what it was is the 7s love the party and the excitement. And Seagram's has a 7 on it with a crown. They liked that. This picture is the party again, having something black and white and boring and turning it into something fun. Now, what I would probably like to do is take the alcohol out and just have more people and have this be the 7. But what I discovered is that alcohol ads are very focused like a 7, just the way the merit ad was very focused on 3, the archetype of 3. You'll be successful. Only successful people smoke, merit cigarettes. And this, all the partying, the fun is like representative of 7. And 7 Up was exactly that. The whole campaign for 7 Up was like, oh, you'll be happy. You'll be up when you drink it. And 7's always been considered a lucky number. Now, the Marlboro Man, I remember having 7s talk about how they just wanted to always look totally comfortable in whatever they were doing. And that the Marlboro Man represented that because he was like one with the horse, and his hat and everything looked right, but it wasn't shiny and new looking. It was being at ease. And it's like being the cool kid without looking like you just got the new shirt or the new tennis shoes, whatever is popular. Like how to look cool and popular without acting like it. And I shared a story where a 3 and a 7 needed to ride horses, and neither of them really knew how. And the 3 went out and got everything new, and everything looked really poised and finished and polished. And the 7 went and bought used boots and a jacket that looked good but looked like it had been worn. And the feeling of the 7 was, I can't look like this is the first time I'm riding a horse. And they both actually practiced so they wouldn't feel uncomfortable. It was a business situation, and horseback riding was going to be part of it. And neither man knew how, but it was fascinating to me the way the 7 had to not look like it was new. It has to look like it's second nature. And that's what being cool is. It's not necessarily having everything shiny and polished and new. However, 7s could like that, but overall they're gonna end up modifying the fashion just enough so that it matches them naturally. 8. With 8, it was interesting because they chose this magazine, Psychology Today, with bullies. And I can't tell you how many 6s that look at this collage and say, oh yeah, 8s are bullies. I go, no. The 8s didn't choose this because they're bullies. The 8s chose this because they were the people who fought the bullies, who protected the underdog from the bullies. It's a totally different psychology, but 6s are easily intimidated and project. So it made perfect sense that a 6 would feel that way, because anyone really strong and confident could make them feel a little unease, like is this going to be a nice person or not. But whereas on the 7 board, the lion was not showing their teeth, on the 8 board, this cat is. It's like showing the dominance. It's like being at ease with the crown. And at this time, he worked for Disney, and it was also a satire. But whether or not we have the knight, the 8s felt like they had to be the knight, but they weren't the shiny knight that was all polished like the 1 or the 6, but they were the dark knight. So if no one was around and they saw anyone that was vulnerable, they'd help that vulnerable person. Many 8 actors always, whenever possible, and they could influence this, they would choose roles where they were the down and out 8 that then they had to help someone vulnerable and it brought them back. And who's one of my favorite eights? He did Malcolm X, and Jonathan, are you still there?
Denzel Washington.
Thank you. Denzel Washington. First, he played roles that he needed to make money like anybody else. But once he was able to have enough influence, he's never played a type other than an 8 since. And it's always the 8 overcoming the obstacle and being that kind of tough guy that really underneath it has a heart of gold. And that's what the 8 is. Now, what's interesting is the positioning and the pose of this woman is very 8. And the attitude up here is very much like the 8 was 7. But if we look at this woman, she's a 6. And I've thought to myself, oh, I need to take her out of there. And then I thought, no, I want to show how a counterphobic 6 thought she was an 8, and she does have 8 in the tritype, the person who sent this in. But she's got the pose that's kind of 8, but the 8 has to have the easy, it's not like I'm tough. It's like, yeah, I'm tough. It's coming from a different place. And so I left her, but if you look at her face, it's more, you can even see, even though she's not smiling, you can see that she doesn't have the tough quality that this model does. And this model might be a 4, but whatever the case may be, she's enough of a warrior that it looks 8-ish. And even the really reserved 8, you can see in their eyes this predatory quality. And yeah, 8s have to wear suits like anybody else. And they come in all attitudes. Now, when we were comparing the woman on the 2 board with the beads and the hair done in a certain way, it's contrasted here now by a woman that looks like an 8. And it's even like the attitude of the 8 with the fist. And I have her on the card, and it says born to nag. And on the card, she doesn't have anything on her, but maybe I should have left it. But I remember non-female 8s saying, oh yeah, I didn't choose the 8 cards because there wasn't anything really feminine. And I knew they weren't 8s because female 8s don't care. If she's on there, it matches the internal world. We don't have to look like a model. Even if we're sexual 8, we want to look good, but we're going to identify with her more than we are her. Because inside there's a toughness, and there's also a tenderness underneath that. But it's a posture, it's a stance. He is an 8, and he was just snapped while on set making a movie, but it's just the way he's standing. Robert Mitchum, right? God, I hope that's right. But he played all 8 characters. He was rarely not an 8, the same thing. Now, I would take the samurai and distinguish between I could put the samurai on the 1 board too, because there is a precision. There's a warrior quality to both the samurai and the knight. And both 8 and 1 as gut types have that. But there's a little bit more of an awkwardness with all the metal you had to wear. And there's more precision, really like a 1. So it could very easily have been there. And if I had a bunch of different pictures of samurais now, I'd be able to pick out the 8 samurai and the 1 samurai. But if you're trying to decide between an 8 and 1, look at the appropriateness. Look at what they're trying to teach you. And last but not least, whoops, the 9. Now what I have on here, if you don't know it, I have the, talking about the type. Oh, this one I have a video. Oh, because it's 9 and I was talking about 9. But I also have the Pinterest boards, and you may not realize that this button is here. And if you click on the Pinterest board, I think you won't see it. If I do, that I'd have to reshare. But it leads to a bunch of people, actors and celebrities, that are each Enneagram type. So I don't know what to do about that button, whether I need to have it on the top here and just say Pinterest. Because something you guys would have to tell me, but there's something that says C type 9 Pinterest boards here. Seems good, but people go right by it. Okay, so back to 9. The first thing I thought was, hey 9s, I need some more pictures. Because they sent a lot of big pictures, but hardly any little pictures or medium pictures. So I had to go with the theme, and the overall theme was this universal quality, this and just this comfort and desire to be at ease. And when I got this picture, it wasn't a magazine, it was just a picture, but it had this hammock, and I said to the person who sent it in, well, wouldn't you like it even better if it had someone lying in the hammock, and it would entice you to think, oh, I could be doing that. And the 9 said, no, it needs to be empty, because if it's empty, I can go claim it. And if there's no one around, I know I'll be able to enjoy it for a long time. If there are people in it, I have to wait till they get out of the hammock. I might have to talk to them when they leave and I go lie down. I want total ease and comfort and stillness and quiet. And it was interesting that a lot of 9s that were the more introverted 9s used the word quiet and still. And if they were a 9 with 4 and 5, it invariably was on there, or a word like quiet, especially if they were INFP or even INTJ. They want this quiet. But there's a humbleness. So he would be a 9 with 2 in the tritype. A 952 often has this quality that this woman is displaying. And at the time, I hadn't done hardly anything with tritypes because I was still just collecting on the types. And I was about 6 months into noticing these patterns. But I was saying, I wonder why one person would choose these 2 characters and someone else would choose Andie MacDowell in a photo shoot where she's making fun of things. She wasn't, but she was dressed that way. But the key thing was all this resting. There were even more. And I had to not put them all on, or you would have said, oh, is this a board about people taking a nap? But you can also notice how this was a makeup ad, but the 9 chose it because she was saying she was asleep to her true self, and that's why they like the sleeping also. But that there's a diffuse quality that they give the world, which you can really see here. It's almost like a blank receptivity. So it's not like those 5 eyes or the 8 eyes where they're really looking at you. It's receptive eyes. There's an invitation in. Andie MacDowell is most likely the 9, and she matches this perfectly. Now there's a picture of her on the 7 board with the feathers and everything, and she matches here better. the reason she was on the 7 board, it was she was doing archery or no, she had the feathers in her hat. So these were hats, I guess. It was promoting hats. But it was interesting to me that a 9 and 7 both sent in pictures from the same photo shoot, but a different picture. And the reason they gave became very indicative of type. Then years later, like a year and a half, and the other one like a few years later, they knew their tritypes, and they were 9 with 7. And one I didn't see for a while to check that out. I was pretty sure they both had 9 with 7 in the tritype. So it made sense that they would like the same photo shoot, but choose a picture that was communicating more about them. But see the humbleness of this woman, like looking down rather. You don't see anything really alert coming back at you, but the sexual subtype will have the eyes that are connecting with you. But there is a beauty of sorts and identifying with the soft touch. But I think now 9s would send more pictures, although I don't know. And when I gave my first class, I said I felt like I was cheating the 9s because the 5 had so many pictures and theirs were all big, and they go, no, we don't want all the pictures. And their stress is like this, that they go from being calm and then like the straw that breaks the camel's back, all of a sudden they're chaotic and then they overassert. And they see themselves kind of like a blank slate, like simple, not complex, easy going, easy to be around. Their identity is of being a nice person, a kind, nice person. And with that is you can't really assert, because people who assert are going to separate from someone. If you have a specific point of view, there are going to be others that don't have that point of view. So if you can hold this neutral place, there'll be more people that are comfortable with you. So it was really, really meaningful to me as to every single picture that was chosen, because I got the story and the interview that went with it. And I'm just highlighting some of my favorite qualities. I mean, I received so many planets in the universe, but the universe, there was no way to really get it on the collage in a meaningful way. But that 9s like the universe, they like the planet, they like stars, moons, a lot of nature. There were a lot of pictures of nature. And if I had more room, I would have had more in there. They didn't have as many pictures of people. And you can see those that were there are 3 of them are asleep. 4 of them are asleep. And 2 of them are really diffuse. These may have been the same ad too, I'm guessing now. It was long enough ago. So just imagine being really excited about the Enneagram and meeting me and saying, please, 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 I need the opinion of the 9, the 5, the 3, the 2, the 1, the 6, the 7. And I need you all really fairly represented. Please send me the pictures. So they would dutifully go. And those of the people that went in 1995 and bought magazines were the ones that ended up with the same ads. Some of my really great pictures were from people that already had the magazines around the house, and then they just went through those. But if I were to have the same magazine, because I've done this in courses. I have a course that's where you work on your type and focus on improving it and becoming more aware of it. Like you already know your type. And I called it ePro 2, and it was a week-long course. And I would include, 3. I had 1, 2, and 3, 4 of them. But in 3, rather, you had learned about the types, the tritypes, and the instincts. And type 3 was about personal development, understanding different things once you knew your type and your tritype. So one thing that we did is created collages. After I learned the power of these collages, I thought, I wonder what people would do. And what I required is that everyone bring 10 pictures that they wanted. Now it'd be much easier with the internet. You could just pull them right off the internet. You could say, I want this. But actually, what says more about the person is to go through magazines and have to choose from the magazines that you find. So everyone could bring their own 10 pictures, but they had to choose from group magazines. So you had to bring pictures and magazines to put in the pot. And I did this in Belgium, I did it in Southern California, I did it in Northern California, I've done it in study groups, I've done it with these kids in high school, I've done it with all ages. And it's really extraordinary. So if you teach the Enneagram and you want to help people discover the subtleties about their type, wow, I'm just thinking of another event. If I just did a whole event on people's collages, because I have a lot of them, you can really see type. And it helps some people realize maybe their head type was different than they thought. And it shows in the collage. Because what we will choose, we can't separate from what the defense strategies are saying we should identify with. So, for example, there was a 4 that thought she was a 5, a 4, 5, 8. I could make a case for 4, 5, 8. But she was like, her pacing was faster. The colors that she wore were brighter, like the 7s reported. And when she made her collage, there was a pirate and a lot of bright things, which is a hallmark of my tritype, which is 4, 7, 8. I just happened to lead with the 8. And her collage was so similar to mine, even though she was a 4. There was more forlorn and sadness on hers, which I didn't have. But otherwise, we had very similar choices in our pictures. And she quickly saw that she was the 4, 7, 8, and that she just had the 5 wing. Things like that, subtleties, emerge the more that we do this. And yeah, I guess everybody could share their collage. We could screen share and do it. I guess everything's adaptable to this medium. We just have to get used to it. But I find it very instructive, especially with 9s, because 9s have great difficulty doing anything which separates them from others, as I mentioned. They will make decisions by consensus. If they're managers, their team members will say how nice they are, but they'll say that the 9 is an indecisive manager. And what they like about their 9 manager is that the manager goes with consensus, but that some members of the team, because I often would work with each person separately and then the team as a group, but they would say, I really like this manager, but there are times when you don't go with consensus. You, as a manager, do what's best for the team. Even if 5 people think one way and only one person thinks another way, as a manager, you need to know which way to go with. So 9s are valued for this consensus building, but they are critiqued for not being more individualistic. They're admired for listening to all points of view, but they frustrate people because they don't say, okay, I got it. I get your opinion, but it's not mine. Because in the receptivity, the 9 is saying, oh yeah, that was mean. I could see how that's mean. And people feel really heard. But the person walking out the door thinks, yeah, that 9 manager is on my side. But then the other team member comes in and talks to the 9, and the 9 goes, oh yeah, that would be tough, and identifies with the other team member. So team member number 2 walks out thinking, the manager gets it, she's on my side. And then there's a general meeting and the 9 does something altogether different. And the team members are very confused, like, why did you agree with me yesterday or 2 days ago and not tell me that you had this perspective? And then the 9s would usually say, oh, well, I understood your point of view and I have compassion for your point of view, but it wasn't my point of view. I had to think about it to know my point of view. But a lot of times 9s can unwittingly, encourage is not the right word and promote isn't the right word, but enable more dissension because they are not saying in a business setting, I could really see how that would be very troublesome. But if you're asking me my opinion, I think I'm probably going to go this way. I'm not sure. I'll need to think about it more. Something that lets the person know when they're leaving that they're understood, but they're not necessarily going to be endorsed. And that's the biggest thing with 9s, is to find ways to individuate. So I have them build collages. And so they have to choose the picture that's going to go on the collage. And this I even do on the internet because it's one collage. And I've done it for years because I have clients from all over the world. But if that feels overwhelming to them, I begin with just words, like a word cloud, where you can just put in these words and then it creates a cloud. And they look kind of neat, except sometimes some of the words are too big and it's not the word you'd want to have big, so you kind of redo the word clouds. So I have word clouds on all 9 Enneagram types. And boy, were they hard, because you don't want some words giant and other words small. But if a 9 does that, they have to choose which words would go on there. And even if I just said, okay, 20 adjectives about yourself, they still have to choose, and it's hard. But once they begin the process of individuating and making those choices, they then find it easier to differentiate from others in other ways. So each Enneagram type and tritype, and depending on their instinct, is influenced. And when we consider all 4 factors, including Myers-Briggs, we have a really clear picture of where someone's attention is going. And that's what I always want to promote, is greater understanding for the emotional world of each Enneagram type. Thank you so much for your willingness to answer questions and ask questions, because other people are going to benefit from the questions you asked and answered. Okay, so I'll say goodbye, good evening to some of you. Bye-bye.